Right, afternoon everybody. Welcome again to another edition of FGS TV. Seeing quite a few people there that I recognise and a few new ones, which is always good. One from the States, which is nice. Person I don't know, so welcome. Azerbaijan. There you go. Getting more popular, global. I think this is going. So gents, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Joining it. So we've got John Kaiser down at the bottom, who we all know. John Kaiser works for FGS, as I do. Yeah, and really runs the technology side of the business. Yeah. I'll introduce you to Chris Ibbotson. No, Chris, introduce yourself, mate.
Hi guys, so Chris Ibbotson. I'm Chief Technologist at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, focused on financial services as an industry. Good to be here. And
Chaz McInhill, hope you don't mind me calling you Chaz.
No problem.
And so Chaz is the VP of a large international bank based in the city and based in an American bank, but based in the city, Europe, Far East, a lot, so very big footprint. So VP of IT in the UK. And so I tell you what, guys, it's I know it's a subject that's been well trodden, but I would like to bring it up. And we're based in the city, FGS. HPE are based everywhere, really, but you're just around the corner from us. Where Chaz is, and most of the international banks and the finance sector, all in the city. Now, we're going into the city probably every couple of weeks, go in, but really, we only go into the city now to have a social. So get a few people from the office, have a few beers mid-afternoon, let them have a little break, yeah. So I'm going to go over to you, Chaz, first. Talking about the city, how do you see the city going in the next 6 months, 6 years? How do you see it?
Well, there's two questions there. The next 6 months, I think it's going to remain the same. I mean, we've got to get through this winter, haven't we?
Yeah. With very few people going in. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, our office has been locked down all the way through it, apart from essential support staff, running the IT infrastructure. Yeah. Funny enough, actually, during this, we've actually added more resilience during this and had the opportunity to do it easier while this has been going on. The office has been the support guys at home for that. That said, I absolutely do not see. Well, I hear this from not just our bank, other banks that we communicate with as well, that we're not looking at doing anything this side of Christmas, and probably not until March.
It should be a year since lockdown.
Exactly. I mean, we were earlier in the year. I don't know, April. Everyone was talking about September, November. I mean, even the news this morning, you saw they're talking about Liverpool and Manchester being properly locked down again. I mean, Scotland's doing it. So I think there's been a few lessons learned as a result of the first, for want of a better word, wave. 6 years. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess, but I think that it's brought forward. The next 10 years has been brought forward into a year. I mean, we all left the offices and we've all done our bits and pieces to get people working from home. I was quite amazed at how the transition from the entire office in 2 weeks, being in the office, to being shoved out of the office and been since. We've done a lot of resiliency upgrades, but for our eye connecting in, people remoting in and all that. We've got like a mesh network across Europe between all the other offices. Tested it; it all works. It's fine. I wouldn't have said that before this. I was like, good luck with this, and I'm responsible for the technology.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one because we're seeing so many companies saying, actually, when they locked that door and everyone went home, they didn't have this amazing issue, which they thought they would have. It was something they would never allow before. Bang, overnight it happened. And we've had very few clients that had a real issue. We've had one of our broking clients, bigger financial brokers in the city, right near where you are actually, Chaz, in Broadgate Circle. They didn't have the technology to be allowed to work from home. They have carried on working. They're one of the biggest in the world. But they're one of the only financial companies that we've seen carry on working in the city. Everybody had to work in the city.
Is that because they're voice orientated?
They are voice orientated, yeah, exactly.
But there's other ones. I can guess who it is, but You know, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but there's another thing. You see, that was the other thing. We've always had this, people in the past. We've had people can work from home, and that started picking up a little bit of speed. Nothing like what it is now. But the trading environments and, FX and securities lending and all brokerage, that type of business, we never ever thought anyone would be able to do that because of all the regulations around voice recording and, all that stuff. It's all happening. It was all put in place. They were the last to leave the office. But, from 2 weeks of saying, pulling the trigger, they were out of the office, the whole lot of them, sorry. And, they're recorded, they're compliant, the whole lot.
It's great. I've really enjoyed seeing how the infrastructure for these places have all stood up, pretty much all stood up, and they might have had to make some changes, but it's all been fairly, what's the word I'm looking for? The continuity has been really, really strong. So, Chris, over to yourself there. I mean, you obviously, Chaz there works with one organisation, so he sees it from one place. You work, as we do, you're in the financial sector for HPE. How have you seen this impacting the client base that you're dealing with? What are you hearing? What challenges are you seeing?
So I think similar to Chaz, many firms were able to adapt really quickly to having the majority of the workforce remote. I think what they're now looking at is, whilst they were able to do stuff really quickly, the services they were using to enable that remote connectivity in the past have never been highly critical to them because they could always come in the office. So now it's a lot of remediation of, we really need to make sure that's scalable, resilient, not a single point of failure in it, because if we lose that now, we lose the firm. And I think we've seen a lot of that across firms, big and small. Like some of the big players were like, well, we've never needed it because it was a perk. You could just come in the office. I think similar to many firms which were planning to bring people back into Canary Wharf, if we use that as the extension of the city, as well as a square mile for September, that got put back to October now. It's now back into next year with a probably March, April time, no way before that. I think getting the crystal ball out to your 6-year question, Pete, I think, and maybe I'm looking at this rose tinted because I've worked in the city and I'm used to that environment. I think we'll get into a bit of a hybrid, to coin that phrase. It'll work probably how I've worked for many years, and I'm guessing some of us here might, with what we do, where we might work from home a couple of days, come in the office for a couple of days if we need to see people. I think that'll become a bit more of a norm, and I bet including to traders and various people doing activities which in the past they never thought they'd do at home or somewhere else. Will become a bit more of a norm in that flexibility.
It's going to be really interesting because I thought the city had to be in the city. So we're in the city and in Malta. So I was in Malta probably a third of the time, in the city the other time. And if I ever thought, God, I'm going to have to work from home today, thinking that would be a real downside. Actually, I've gone the other way, although this second wave's hit me a bit more on a personal basis, thinking, actually, it was the spring. We all love the spring. It was a lovely weather. You could go in the garden. You could work in the garden. And it was a bit of a novelty. This is just dragging on a bit now. It's dragging on. The weather's going to be shocking. No doubt we have a bad winter just because of it. Sod's law. And it's going to affect. I'm just thinking, I just don't want it to carry on anymore. It's getting to me. Not in a big way, just a little bit. I can't believe it. Which is why I like to go up into town. Last week I went out with a couple of clients and another guy, Barry, works for us, and it was a really nice 2 or 3, 4 hours sitting down chatting in the pub, really pleasant. So where before it'd be a bit of a break to work from home, now the other way. But I can't see. So the restaurants, I think in 6 years' time, there's going to be the same number of restaurants. But it's going to drop down. I think we're going to get then a lot of residential in the city, as well as, we've had some blocks go up opposite Liverpool Street, residential. I think a lot of places will go residential. So you get those restaurants and bars will come back, but it would just be for a mixture of city, but really, I hate to say it, Trump Towers. He's got all sorts. It's a mixed use, isn't it? You know, you've got a hotel, you've got apartments, you've got offices, you've got restaurants. So I think a lot of the buildings, like maybe your HPE building, go like that. I mean, what are you seeing, JK? I mean, how are you finding this? What are you seeing? What do you think? I'll give the 6-year question to you. What's the city going to be like?
Sorry, what's the city going to be like?
Yeah.
I think the city's going to be quiet over the winter. I think that you're going to have, obviously, there's the restrictions that are probably going to come in place. I think we're going to see some more of those. You know, London is a very dense area, and you know, even if they want to prevent things, they're going to probably need to stop people getting together, especially in the winter, because you're more likely to be closer to other people in the winter and packed on trains and tubes. So I can see that, and I think from a personal level, I think traveling into the city during the summer is nice. You know, it's light in the morning, light in the evening. It's quite a nice thing to do. Depths of winter, where it's pitch black at 7 in the morning, and it's there are kind of stair rods of rain lashing at you on an open platform. People are going to say, do you know what? If I can work from home, I think I'll work from home. But I do see the other side of it. It's for you, Pete, it's a bit of an escape. It's something different to go and do. And prevent the onset of cabin fever. So that's the other side to it. That in the winter, people won't be out in the garden. They won't just pop out for a walk. It will be pure cabin fever inside the house. So I think the balance is going to be really difficult for people to get.
So, well, it's good. Yeah, it's going to be a hard winter, is what we're saying, I think. Right. Impact on IT. Let's go with you, Chris. What's the impact have you seen, and what is the impact going to be? Or is there going to be none? Just to quickly go on our perspective, for what we've seen. I remember this when the lockdown happened. Called everybody on Monday. We had a big company meeting on the Monday, and I said, look, this is going to be hard times. We are going to struggle here. We hope to keep everybody. We hope everyone's wages. We've flown. We have not seen that dip, but I can understand a lot of people out there will have seen that dip. They're in different marketplaces, and they're partners and resellers of ours who maybe deal within the hotel industry or whatever. I was trying to think, well, they were obviously having a shocking time, but we've seen no difference. We do a lot of banking, as you know, a lot of the banking sectors, and that's in Malta and in the UK. We've seen no difference. And we do a lot in the gaming industry, gambling industry, online, and we've seen, that hasn't changed either. So how have you seen it, Chris? And how do you think it's going to change? Or is it not have an impact?
So I think from a financial services perspective, what I've seen was probably at the start of lockdown, a massive increase in we need infrastructure to support VDI. We need remote access connectivity, all of that stuff to keep the business going. I think now that's settled, there's an element of how do we ensure that's resilient? So we almost get a second wave of requirements around we now need to build out DR or active type setups. I think there's also been an increase in interest around automation and lights out type capabilities. So how can we manage stuff without needing people to physically go near it?
Yeah.
And then it's got into the prioritization of, okay, we had a big book of change, which equals this demand. Let's now reassess. I think many of the big banks and more mid-size are now looking at, no one knows what the future holds. I think everyone's been a bit more cost conscious. Not that I don't think it was cost conscious before this, but looking at what we're going to spend money on. I think there's been a couple of examples of where personally I've seen that some of the bigger players have got out of their own way in what they're delivering. So where in the past they've always had great order books of hundreds of projects in a year to deliver, which maybe never deliver many of them. Now it's been, what do we need to prioritise to keep the bank going? Let's deliver this, and done it really quickly. And that's been probably a mix of on-premise where they needed to stand up kit, but also some of the, I know an insurance company had a nice 12-month plan to move to Office 365. And they managed to deliver that in months instead, because if they didn't, they just couldn't carry on working.
Yeah, so cheers, Chris. It's interesting to see. It's good. Chaz, what do you think? Did you see any changes apart from home working?
Yeah, I think actually going to what you were saying from your sales point of view, if you take it from the business point of view, or our company specifically, but I think it's going to be the same with a lot of companies. It's almost like with this, the two waves of this virus. The first wave was that as Chris was saying, build out the infrastructure, the resiliency around the new way of business as usual working model, which is everyone working from home, that focus. But I think the second wave is potentially going to be a bit more of a cost containment. I think, I mean, depends on what your business does. I mean, if your business is flourishing as a result of this, then well, but the way that I see it is that I think that, especially with this zero interest rates and all the rest of it, the banking industry is going to be suffering as a result of this, with all the quantitative easing and all the rest of it that's been going on. So, I don't know. That's the way I see it. But actually, from a people point of view, I mean, we the whole old sort of desktop support model, people floor walking and going around and visiting people's desks and all that. Well, obviously that's all gone away, and they've all been put on, in our situation, ACD, like the automated call distribution systems through the phone system. Now, that's all been well and good, and the users are starting to become more technically sophisticated on making things work from home, because they're having to fix their own routers or be talked through it and all this sort of stuff. So the users are actually becoming a little bit more. And what I can see coming down the pike with us, I mean, I know some companies have already got serious, some of the bigger banks have got serious sort of self-service models in place. But, the whole AI behind it, and, all these chat boxes where people can, and it'll fix things, like when you chat to, I don't know, whatever it is. But, we're doing that as an organization now as well. So I could even see, if you're talking about 6 years down the line, I can even see that, and I hate to say it, but a lot of types of business where the staff become part of a gig economy. They might be working for more than one company, I mean, that's that if you talk about 6 years, because if you've got an HR function for a small company, they have their HR, but is that really a full-time employee role? You could have an HR specialist that could be working for 3 companies from home. We've all got the infrastructure to do that now, because it's been forced to make sure that we have to,
Yeah. So more.
I don't like saying the gig.
No, I get it.
I mean, the Uber IT industry, the Uber. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily affect the IT side of it, because that's always going to be needed. I mean, the technology's proven to be needed more so than ever. It's just changed slightly. Sorry, there's about 3 answers in that.
no, that's fine. It's just a general sense. And we're coming to you, Jake, as I said, but on the security side, this I remember about a friend of mine who's really high up in one of the big brokering firms, and not the one we're talking about, although he is back in the city. And he's on the board. Now, he's been working from home quite a lot, although he's now back in town. Some of the stuff, but I was just out there drinking and having dinner and stuff like this. Kids playing cricket outside. So it was a couple of weeks ago, it was cold. And some of the stuff he'd printed off, I was saying, I don't think I should be seeing this. We should be looking. Now, look at where you are, Chaz. There's so many other banks. They've got such a sophisticated printing system. Yeah, you could only print, and you can only get it if you've got your card. You can touch a printer. You've got to be there. At home, you haven't got that control. So that information security side of things is really tough. Who do you give printers for? Actually, working with the printer, working with paper, some people need to do it. I know my wife, who runs finance, she needs to print off half a tree before she can start working today, yeah? And it's just the way people work. So what do you think about that, JK, on the security side? And especially on print, I know we don't do print, yeah, or very little of it, but that just in general, it's different at home. People listen to behind your back.
Well, it is. I think we've got a sticking plaster at the moment in most of the setups. So most organisations are still using a traditional kind of VPN type approach. So just extending the corporate network out to the client site using using a VPN client. But I think we probably have to have a complete rethink, because the topology has changed. We're using a topology that was designed for working in one way to try and solve the issues we've got now. So that is the next thing that needs to be thought about. So more of a kind of software defined WAN, that type approach to doing things, where you're not reliant on these clients and endpoints and so on. And that will help with part of the security, but with the actual physical information, that's really difficult to contain, because you might allow someone to print at home and they print off a load of stuff that is fine for their eyes, but not for leaving it around, and it might have sensitive information. So you have to think about ways of doing that. Maybe you have digital readers where the content can only be read on the device, and you need a password or an access code to get onto it, so it's blanked off, or so technology solutions like that, I think, are going to need to come along. But it is difficult for people who are used to using paper, because I can see why someone in kind of a finance and accounting, it is quite good to be able to run a ruler and a highlighter down a page. That's really difficult to do on the screen. So there's a call out.
You'd do in the screen, wouldn't you?
You would, absolutely.
Especially if you had Tipex.
Oh, don't! I'm forever kind of getting it off when I've made a mistake on an email. Yeah. But and I think maybe that's a challenge out to the application developers, to Microsoft and Google. How do you change your applications to suit people who can't print at home? How do you make them more user friendly? So the good news is, if we're not printing as much off, we're not using as much paper, we're not using as much toner, there's less plastic and all sorts of other stuff kind of flying around. And
maybe they should do it like that Banksy picture that shreds itself.
Yes.
After you've read it, it shreds itself.
Well, or like 1960s spy films. The kind of the thing will burn immediately after you've taken it out and read it. This message will self-destruct. It's.
I think security is a big thing. Really, really interesting.
And I think it is, but I think you kind of got monitoring as well. So. The monitoring of people in their own homes by a commercial organization, that starts to raise all sorts of difficult and ethical questions. So on one hand, you're selling your time as the employee to that organization, so they should be able to view what you're doing. But on the other side, does that should that organization be able to come electronically or digitally into your home? Very, very difficult there.
No, brilliant. Interesting. So I'm going to come back to you in a sec, Chaz. We haven't got too much longer. Come back to you, Chaz, because you brought interest on interest rates and the banking. So I'll go to that in a second. I know it's a subject that you know very, very well. But Chris, what have HP done differently? What have they had to change? HPE had to change in this market, but also in the financial sector market, because you're right about the costs. People are hammering down the reseller like us to try and save extra pounds, extra euros. I can see that quite clearly. So we've fortunately had really great support for the vendors like yourselves. But what have HPE done to make it easier for clients or make them still be relevant?
So it's probably a couple of bits. So if I look at HPE inward for a second, how we changed. So we literally we preempted the lockdown. So we went in the UK and Ireland, well, actually globally, everyone working from home unless there's a reason you can't, which is typically if they're working on certain types of activity which they can't do at home. And we're still around all of our US business is still at home, as an example. So we've taken a very cautious approach, as is the UK at the moment. So that was a big change from people being in the office, we've always been a mobile workforce, but now everyone fully remote, having to really quickly stand up using different collaboration tools, adopting Zoom very quickly, getting Microsoft Teams set up, etc. I think if we look at customers, so I think we've had a bit of a mantra of being here to help. is, I don't know the exact marketing phrase we stuck with, but kind of what can we do to help our customers? So proactively reaching out. Do you know what you're going to need? Especially at the start of the pandemic, we were still suffering from some supply chain issues because of what was happening around the world. So it's like, how can we predict what do you need? How can we help you? I know we've done the same with our partner community as well, around looking at how we can be a lot more flexible to do business, because we realise as much as it's become difficult for us, it's equally difficult for guys like you as well as our end customers. I think as we hit the summer, we were quite public in sharing different ways of how to help people get back to an element of normality, whatever that normal really is. So whether it's remote access solutions from Aruba, and I know we did a lot with outside of FSI, but with healthcare, donating Aruba kit to enable them to stand up testing facilities at the time.
Yeah, how you didn't do the track and trace?
I was saying, it wasn't track and trace.
I wouldn't put your name on that one. That was well beating, wasn't it?
It was definitely testing facilities.
Yeah.
But helping like those industries by donating kit. We've also, if you imagine, and it's another outside of FSI, but we're quite big in high performance compute at the exascale perspective. So we've had a lot of our both research and development community globally crunching different data sets to actually help some of the research going on, but also donating some of our HPC capability to research. But I think back to financial services, it's been leading with messaging of how can you do remote access securely? How can we help you with that? How can we help you with VDI and that type of capability, and offering financial support around that via obviously our HPFS arm of the business. How can we help either buy back assets you've already got, recycle assets, get laptops back out to people as quickly as possible if you need physical devices, which we know a lot of customers have struggled with.
Yeah, okay. No, but, so Chaz, cheers for that, Chris. It's interesting to see what different people are doing. Chaz, one you mentioned about the credits, we're one of the last ones we're going to touch on, but this is financial services, this really is not IT. But you've talked about the banks will struggle because interest rates are going to be down at 0 for a long time, as far as I can see. Yeah. And so does that mean, with companies going out of business and, you know, the recession's hit us, went down 20%, we're the largest of the G7, I believe. Yeah. Bad debts, then in banks, there's no interest being paid. There's no interest coming. And so when they're lending, they're not bringing much in. There'll be another credit crunch. What do you think the whole thing's going to pan out? What do you reckon, Chaz? Because I know you look at this a lot and you talk a lot about this.
Well, I don't think it's probably not the right thing to phrase to use a credit crunch. It's slightly different. That's banks lending to one another. But I think the problem is, I mean, obviously the central banks, Bank of England, the Fed and all that, they've been trying to pump out money. But what people don't realise, and they think that, you know, to stimulate the economy. But the problem is that what they do is they put that money out to banks, like dealer banks, to lend out to small businesses. But the problem is these small businesses, I mean, if you're a small business, a small restaurant, and you don't want to borrow that money.
No.
Because you've still got to pay it back. So it doesn't necessarily stimulate the economy. It might stimulate the stock market, asset prices. So you get an inflation in asset prices, which is not really part of the economy. But you know, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess because you know, it's not looking very good, is it? I mean, people. The one thing I do know is that a lot of businesses are not borrowing that money.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you've got a small business, say you've got a chain of 3 restaurants, right, and you've got I don't know, I mean they operate on such fine margins anyway, but you need £500,000 to just keep going just to borrow 6 months, just to stand still, just to pay staff and rent and all the rest of it, and then you don't even know where you're going to be after that. You owe that £500,000. You might as well just say, well, some people are just saying, well, you know what, it's not worth it.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, I used to own a pub down in Cornwall, and that never made money. Looked from the outside as that made money. So to borrow money to keep it afloat, so this would have been, I'll just shut it. you know, because it just to not lose as much. So it's going to be a real interesting time. Really interesting times. I think IT is going to be at the forefront of everything. We're fortunate we're in that industry. I think we're fortunate that we're in the financial sector as well. You know, all of us, to be honest, I sell into it, or the business does, and the services into it, and consults into it. You are physically in it, and Chris, you're in the manufacturer that supplies to it. So we're all in that industry. You know, we'll see another BCCI, or, you know, these companies going out of business, Polypex. Hopefully not. Yeah, but we might see some. We're going to see some retailers go down, but whether we're going to see big financial institutions go down, you know, hopefully not. And hopefully it won't be sort of domino effects. But we shall see. But it's touch wood. It's been good so far. But I must admit, I don't like saying that as though aren't we good, because we've been fortunate in the industries we've been in, and there's so many people out there who are really hurting through no fault of their own. So on that message of joviality, guys, thanks ever so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this wasn't particularly an IT chat, although we are IT. I thought it was really interesting to hear different viewpoints of what people think, and actually they weren't that different. It wasn't as though we were arguing and disagreeing with each other. I think it started to pan out. We seem to see which way the world is moving, which way the industry is moving. And so let's just touch wood. Hopefully we get out of this quicker than we envisage, because I can't see it being less than another year or so. And we're all going to be successful during that and after. And hopefully we can bring the rest of the people with us. So guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you'll come on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers,
Cheers. Thanks ever so much.
Right.
Cheers.